It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon at Gracie's Grill, the kind of small-town diner where time seemed to soften at the edges. The hum of conversation ebbed and flowed, broken only by the clink of silverware against ceramic plates and the low hiss of the coffee machine that hadn't stopped gurgling since sunrise. The scent of bacon grease, fresh biscuits, and hazelnut coffee lingered in the air like a memory you didn't want to let go of. For over 5 years, Callie Jensen had been a permanent fixture at Gracie's. She wasn't just another waitress slinging coffee and pancakes. She was the heartbeat of the place. She knew that Harold liked his toast just barely golden, that Ruth hated onions but would never send a plate back, and that Mr. Blake, the retired mailman, came in every Wednesday and ordered the same thing: eggs over easy with exactly 2 shakes of pepper. Callie had a smile for everyone, even when her world was falling apart. Her mother's hospital bills had become a storm cloud that never left. Stage 2 cancer, chemotherapy, prescriptions that insurance only half covered. And then there was her kid brother, Mason, barely 17, working 2 part-time jobs while applying to colleges he wasn't sure he could afford. Every extra shift Callie picked up was a drop in a bucket with no bottom. But she still tied on her apron every morning and whispered to herself in the mirror, "Kindness doesn't cost a thing." That afternoon, the bells over the door jingled faintly. A man stepped in, older, probably mid-60s, maybe more. His coat was frayed at the sleeves, and his shoes looked like they'd been through more winters than most people could survive. He didn't meet anyone's eyes. His steps were slow and deliberate, as if each one cost him more than he could spare. Callie met him at the counter, her voice low and easy. "Can I get you some coffee, sir?" The man nodded, fumbling with a worn-out wallet. He pulled out a few coins, dimes, and nickels, no quarters in sight. Callie's eyes scanned the change. It wasn't enough for even the smallest cup on the menu. Across the diner, the manager, Ronald Carter, stood behind the register, eyeing the exchange like a hawk. His voice was cold and sharp. "If he can't pay, he can't stay." Callie hesitated for half a breath. Then she reached for a mug, filled it with steaming coffee, and slid it across the counter. "It's on me," she said gently. The man blinked, stunned. His weathered hands wrapped around the cup as though it were the first warm thing he'd touched in days. "Thank you," he murmured, voice barely a whisper. "Mr." Carter's face turned red. His lips pulled tight like a drawstring bag. He didn't say anything right away, just glared as the man sipped his coffee slowly and then stood, offering Callie a look of immense gratitude before heading back out into the cold. The door closed. Silence stretched. Then Carter walked over, his tone low but seething. "You can't just give food away." "It was just coffee," Callie replied, voice steady. "He needed it." "That's not your call," he snapped. "That's stealing from the diner." "I was just—" "You're fired," he barked. Everything stopped. Even the kitchen went quiet. Callie could feel eyes on her customers frozen, forks midair, mouths half open. She took a deep breath, untied her apron, folded it carefully, and laid it on the counter like a flag of quiet surrender. "I hope one day you understand," she said softly, looking Ronald in the eyes. "Kindness is worth more than a few extra dollars." And she walked out. The chill of the late afternoon air didn't sting as much as she thought it would. There was something liberating about stepping away from a place she had loved, but that hadn't loved her back when it mattered. That night she didn't sleep. Her mother tried to comfort her, even offered to sell off a few of her keepsakes to help with the bills. Mason came home from his shift at the grocery store with extra bread and soup. They were a family used to weathering storms. The next morning, around 10, a sleek black Lincoln pulled up outside Gracie's Grill. Out stepped a man none of the regulars recognized at first. But Carter did. His mouth opened slightly, his face drained of color. The man wasn't wearing the frayed coat anymore. His shoes gleamed. His hair, neatly styled, framed a clean-shaven jaw. His posture was no longer hunched, but proud, authoritative. He looked like someone who'd walked straight out of a boardroom. Because he had. The man who'd sipped Callie's free cup of coffee just the day before was no drifter. He was Jonathan A. Whitlock, CEO of Whitlock Hospitality Group, a company that owns several restaurant chains across the country, including Gracie's Grill. This was his company. That was his diner. He'd been visiting branches in disguise for the past 2 weeks, going undercover to see how staff treated customers, especially those who couldn't immediately pay. He wasn't just checking efficiency. He was measuring humanity. And what he found in Callie had shaken him. "She treated me like I mattered," he said aloud, loud enough for every patron and employee to hear. "Even when she thought I was nobody." Carter stammered, trying to explain. "Wouldn't know, sir. If I had known it was you." "That's exactly the problem," Jonathan cut him off. "You would have treated me differently if you'd known who I was." She didn't need to know. He turned on his heel, got back into the car, and instructed his driver to take him to the Jensen residence. It took 2 calls and 15 minutes, but they found her. Callie answered the door in sweatpants, hair unbrushed, face pale. When she saw him, her eyes widened. "I came to thank you," Jonathan said, his voice warm but firm. "For what?" she asked, still stunned. "For reminding me why I started this company in the first place." He didn't just offer her job back, offered her a promotion, a corporate role, full benefits. He handed her an envelope that held proof of his commitment, a signed contract, full medical coverage for her mother, and an initial deposit to a scholarship fund in her brother's name. "You didn't just serve coffee," he said. "You served dignity." Callie felt the tears come before she could stop them. She tried to speak, but he shook his head. "No," he said. "Thank you." Word of the incident spread like wildfire. Within days, the diner became a symbol, not just for pancakes and pie, but for the value of decency. People drove from neighboring towns just to sit in the booth where Callie once worked. They asked for the kindness coffee and slid tips under napkin holders with notes that read, "For Callie, for her mother, for Mason, for all of us." National news outlets picked up the story. Editorials were written. A well-known journalist dubbed it the coffee that changed everything. Callie never returned to the same counter again. Instead, she traveled. She spoke at schools, at company seminars, at social work conferences. Her story, once just another Tuesday, became an anthem for compassion in a world too busy to notice the quiet ones. And Jonathan? He restructured the entire company's policy. Every new hire, from dishwashers to district managers, sat through a seminar titled Empathy Before Efficiency, with Callie's name in the closing credits. All because one girl decided that someone's dignity was worth more than a few cents of coffee. Because sometimes the smallest act, a warm smile, a hot cup, a moment of grayscan, tilt the world back toward the light. And kindness? It never really leaves. It circles back quietly, gently, sometimes dressed in a suit, but always comes home. Callie stood on the stage of the annual Whitlock Hospitality Summit, her palms damp as the spotlight hit her face. Hundreds of executives, franchise owners, and media figures stared up at her. She took a shaky breath, heart pounding, the memory of that fired afternoon still sharp in her chest. Behind her, Jonathan Whitlock waited with quiet pride, but what neither of them knew, what no one knew, was that Ronald Carter had entered the building under a false badge. Dismissed and humiliated, he'd spent the last 3 weeks emailing board members, calling shareholders, stirring doubt in the shadows. And now he was here. From the back of the ballroom, Carter rose abruptly and strode down the aisle, a folder in his hand, voice booming with accusation. "This is a farce. That girl gave away food, broke policy, and now she's being rewarded? What kind of business are we running, charity or chaos?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Security moved forward, but Whitlock raised his hand to stop them. The room tensed. Callie didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her voice clear as a bell. "You're right, Mr. Carter. I broke a rule. I gave coffee to a man who looked cold and tired and invisible. I saw a human being, not a price tag." She turned to the crowd, gaze sweeping across the stunned faces. "If that makes me unfit to work here, then maybe we need to change what fit looks like." Carter scoffed. "You're naive." Jonathan stepped forward then, voice like thunder. "No." She's exactly the future of this company. He took the folder from Carter, flipped it open, and smiled. These are the same documents we've already reviewed. You've been circulating lies. You tried to sabotage a woman who acted with heart, because you forgot that this company was founded by a man who once washed dishes in the back of a restaurant while being told he'd never belong. He turned to Callie. You're not just hired, he said. You're promoted. Effective immediately, you are the new director of service integrity for all Whitlock brands. Carter opened his mouth to argue, but security had already stepped in. The crowd erupted in applause. And Callie, once just a waitress at a corner diner, stood under the lights, not with vengeance, but with something greater. Victory.